Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. U.S. President Donald Trump delivered a message of unity and progress on Tuesday night during his first State of the Union speech. VOA White House Bureau Chief Steve Herman reports that during the address, the president took credit for a booming U.S. economy, requested $1.5 trillion for infrastructure improvements, and proposed that young people brought illegally to the United States be given a 12-year path to citizenship.
President Trump stuck to the script, touting his administration's accomplishments and talking tough about threats from abroad.
Around the world, we face rogue regimes, terrorist groups, and rivals like China and Russia that challenge our interests, our economy, and our values. In confronting these horrible dangers, we know that weakness is the surest path to conflict, and unmatched power is the surest means to our true and great defense.
North Korea, which is trying to build nuclear-tipped missiles capable of reaching America and its allies, was singled out for criticism. Trump saying its regime has a depraved character. The president made an appeal for domestic political harmony, to modernize transportation infrastructure and reform immigration policies.
Tonight, I call upon all of us to set aside our differences, to seek out common ground, and to summon the unity we need to deliver for the people. This is really the key.
A record number of opposition lawmakers boycotted the president's speech. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus wore kente cloth as a rejoinder to Trump's recent disparaging remarks about African countries. In the Democrats' official response, Trump's name was never mentioned by the congressman whose grandfather's brother was among America's most famous 20th century presidents.
Bullies may land a punch. They may leave a mark. But they have never, not once, in the history of our United States, managed to match the strength and spirit of a people united in defense of their future.
In a country deeply polarized about the 45th president, this one presidential address is unlikely to sway a significant percentage of voters.
I think his base heard a lot of things in that speech they're going to like, but generally my guess is it's going to fall flat with the broader public. I mean, it was a long, more than an hour and 20 minutes, and there weren't really developed ideas for how to move forward. It really was sort of a laundry list of ideas, but without a lot of specific substance.
Despite the president's call for unity and declaring his first year in office a great success, storm clouds loom on the horizon. A special counsel continues to investigate the Trump campaign's contacts with Russian operatives during the 2016 election season and whether the president, once in office, obstructed justice. Steve Herman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, for more perspective on President Trump's first State of the Union address, I'm joined by VOA National Correspondent Jim Malone. Jim, welcome back to Africa 54.
Thanks, Vincent.
Now, as we mentioned, the speech sought to strike a kind of a conciliatory tone here, kind of try to unite the nation. Did the president achieve that in any way?
Well, I think anyone who saw any bit of the speech could see from the reaction of the Democrats in the House chamber that it wasn't having an immediate effect right away. A lot of Democrats did not applaud at various times during the speech. There were some shots of the House leader for the Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, looking none too pleased, if you will. I will say there's a couple of quick instant polls out post-State of the Union that are somewhat favorable to the president, shows that the speech was generally favorably received, but we should add a caution that usually the instant polls after these State of the Union addresses don't have a lot, of impact going forward.
A few other things that people are kind of trying to pay a lot of attention to is like the immigration, issue that is big. Now, what did you make of the framing, and how, to what extent did that kind of help in advancing the conversation between the Republicans and the Democrats?
Right, good question, because there is a plan out there by the administration now to sort of address a comprehensive immigration overhaul. And of course, at the key of it is the fate of these so-called dreamers, the younger immigrants brought here as children illegally. But what you heard from some Democrats is they were annoyed with some of the descriptions that the president used to describe the the sort of security threat posed, in his view, by certain immigrants coming across. So that could be a problem, getting everybody to work together. Overall, though, the speech, you'd have to say, we saw a softer tone from the president than we've seen in the past. That tells me he is interested in reaching out to more independent voters. He needs to broaden his base because he's got historically low approval ratings for a new president.
Yes, but it took quite some credit for the economy and says we live perhaps in the best of times in terms of the economic environment. How accurate, what are you hearing, what do people say, how accurate that is?
Well, for one thing, he talked about the biggest tax cut in American history. It's actually the 8th largest. He's well down the list. But all presidents, to their credit, do take credit for good economic times. But even the polls show that a fair bit of the credit so far continues to be given to his predecessor, Barack Obama, who also enjoyed some economic success, especially in the latter stages of his presidency. So the president is wont to take credit. That's what they do. But with Donald Trump, there's that extra added sort of exaggeration, perhaps in some cases, of how much credit is due.
All right, so we'll wait and see. Perhaps there will be a tweet that might change the conversation again. Thank you very much, Jim, for joining us and offering those insights.